This weekend, Shazam hits the theaters. That means today we're going to stop and rank all 7 DCEU movies from the worst to the best. Hi, my name is Sean Chandler, and I started this channel because I was driving everyone around me crazy talking about movies way too much. If you can relate, you're probably in the right place, and consider clicking that subscribe button. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down in the comment section. Share your rankings. Which ones do you love? Which ones do you hate? And everything in between. My ranking's not the right ranking. It's just my ranking, and I'd love to hear yours. Finally, before we get started, this video is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download of your choice and a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/Sean Chandler. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. I recommend checking out Slugfest. It's a book telling the 50-plus year history of the rivalry between Marvel and DC. You can listen to it for free by signing up for a free trial at audibletrial.com/Sean Chandler. Now let's get started. Coming in last place is Suicide Squad. Now I can respect the WB for trying something different and risky very early on in the DCEU. And I actually really like the cast, the casting, the characterizations, and the chemistry amongst the Suicide Squad. By the strength of them alone, I actually had a pretty good time with this movie the very first time I saw it. And then the more I thought about it, the more I talked with other people, I was like, wait, that movie had some big problems. At first glance, it's kind of shocking how bad the story and the storytelling are here until you realize that apparently David Ayer, the writer and director, only had 6 weeks to write the script for the movie. And then supposedly the studio didn't like the first cut of the movie and thought it was a little bit too grim. So they brought the people in who cut the trailer to re-edit the movie last minute and throw pop songs into the mix. So the first 20 minutes of the movie is just characters being introduced via voiceover and some classic rock song as their character development. The first action sequence isn't until an hour into the movie, and the film just keeps repeating beats. There's 3 different helicopter crashes. Amanda Waller has to be rescued 2 separate times. And given all the behind the scenes shenanigans, it's tough to know, do you blame the script, the story, the editor, the studio? Whoever it is to blame, it's a total mess, and it's unfortunate that this cast wasn't given a better movie. Coming in 6th place is Justice League. I went into this movie just expecting to have a fun time at the movies, seeing some of my favorite comic book characters all on screen together. But what I got was one of the most painfully mediocre films of all time. I mean, it moves pretty quickly. I was never bored during it. They took the first cinematic team up of some of the best superheroes of all time and made a movie with absolutely no flavor. As for the look of the film itself, the entire thing looks overly processed and color corrected. And it's painfully obvious which scenes are Whedon reshoots, both because of the way they look as well as the nature of the humor that was added. It almost feels like they knew they were making a weak film and decided to try and make up for it by just sprinkling jokes all over the whole thing to just add cheap entertainment into the mix. Kind of like a chef who knows he's not very good, so he uses lots of butter, sugar, and sauce to cover up for the bad cooking. I could be more forgiving of all of this if the entire film didn't feel like it was written, directed, and edited by a committee. It's well documented that Zack Snyder wanted to make 2 Justice League films. That was then shortened down to 1 film that they told him to make it lighter, and then he was replaced by Joss Whedon, and then they mandated a 2-hour runtime. And that's what the movie feels like. So you get some Snyder visuals, you get some Whedon jokes, but the whole movie just feels like studio notes. There's no single unifying vision or style, just mediocre, in-focus superhero stuff that doesn't do justice to the Justice League. In 5th place is Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. I actually really enjoy this film, but I fully understand why a lot of people think it is an abomination. For me, I really appreciate that they made a film that had ambitions and tried to explore ideas. The consequences of one film trickle over into the next, as this film is all about the different ways that Batman and Lex Luthor respond to the emergence of the Man of Steel. As usual, Snyder does a great job handling the action, whether you're talking about the chase sequence, the title fight, the amazing warehouse sequence, or even the battle with Doomsday, I think it's all done with his usual visual flair and visceral style. But the plot itself is too convoluted and Luthor's plan way too complex. It feels like it's trying to be 3 different movies at once. The first movie is a Man of Steel sequel about the consequences of Superman on the world. The second one is a movie about Batman fighting Superman because of their opposing ideologies. And the third one is a setup movie for the Justice League. Any one or two of these would have been perfectly fine, but when you try and cram all 3 into one film, you start to having to sacrifice storytelling and story coherence. It's also really grim and cynical. Wonder Woman has walked away from mankind for 100 years. Batman is branding people and mowing people down with machine guns like the Punisher. That's awfully bleak for a movie about a guy whose family symbol means hope. The good outweighs the bad for me, but it's really frustrating to watch a movie that seems both so close and so far from brilliance all at once. At number 4 is Aquaman. James Wan decided to embrace the silliness of Aquaman as a character, and the end result is one of the most fun films in the MCU. It moves at breakneck speed from an origin story to a film about a kingdom to a globe-trotting relic hunting adventure, off to an epic battle in the end, and all of it done with lots of entertainment value. This movie feels like a more successful version of the tone that Justice League was going for. James Wan is cooking with butter and sugar. You've got cheesy one-liners, you've got pop music, you've got corny hero poses, you've got someone eating a goldfish, you've got someone eating a rose. It's lots of cheap entertainment. Now, I could totally see why some people would find all of this a bit fishy, but for me, I found the energy and the effort infectious. I also think the movie suffered a little bit coming out the same year as Black Panther. Now, I fully understand that Aquaman's story comes from the comic books and that predates the story from Black Panther, but it doesn't change the fact that 2 movies came out in the same year about relatives duking it out for control of the kingdom that involves ritual combat. There's more than one really specific plot beat repeated in each of these films, and Black Panther did it first. At the end of the day, it's not a classic film, but it was a good time at the movies for me. Real quick, before I give you my top 3, remember to share your ranking down below in the comment section. Also, after this video, check out this playlist up above with all of my DCEU rankings. I'm gonna be updating all of them this next week, so be sure to tune back in for that. Kicking off our top 3 is Shazam. In an overcrowded comic book market, this movie managed to find its own unique space inside of the genre by basically remaking big, except as a superhero film. Zachary Levi is perfect in the lead. He brings that youthful charisma to the screen. He has this infectious, random energy about him, and you could believe that this is a 14-year-old in an adult's body. Likewise, the basic setup of the film is ripe with comedic opportunities. When you give a 14-year-old those kinds of powers, they're gonna do something funny with it. And one of the things the film did really well is that it extended the comedy from beginning to end. A lot of movies, as you move into the third act, they kind of put the comedy on the back burner. This movie found new twists and turns to make it funny throughout the whole runtime. Probably the thing that surprised me the most about this film is that it has a lot of heart. Billy Batson has a full character arc, and that's what informs his journey as a hero. It explores ideas about finding family and what really matters in a way that is actually pretty emotional. At the same time, the tone is very uneven and it's unclear who the target audience is. On the one hand, you have Shazam's antics and his little shenanigans that my 5-year-old would love, and then it cuts to the boardroom scene where people are being brutally murdered by monsters, and then he goes to a strip club. Those two things don't really go side by side very well. Still, this film is very entertaining and hits a lot of the right emotional notes, so it has a nice little place in the genre. Our runner-up is Wonder Woman. When I first heard that they were making a movie about an Amazonian goddess who flies around in an invisible jet, swings a magic lasso, and dresses in a US flag swimsuit, I had no clue how they would pull that off without it being very cheesy. And in fact, 10 years ago, Joss Whedon tried to make a Wonder Woman movie and failed at it. But Patty Jenkins cracked the code and made a movie that has interesting characters, a great sense of humor about it, cool looking action sequences, and actually kind of explores some ideas. Gal Gadot's irresistible mix of charm, innocence, and confidence makes for a compelling lead that goes really well with Chris Pine's steadfast character and humor, and he gets some really funny moments. Unfortunately, the third act doesn't quite live up to the first two. Now, Steve Trevor's final moments are very powerful, but Wonder Woman's side of the story takes kind of a strange turn. It starts getting very talky and loses momentum when it should be kicking into high gear. Despite losing a little bit of momentum towards the end, it's still a wonderful addition to the franchise. But coming in first place is Man of Steel. Zack Snyder's reimagining of the Superman mythology took me several viewings to kind of settle in on what I thought about it. It abandoned several kind of iconic elements of both Clark Kent as well as Superman, so it can be a little bit off-putting on first viewing. But the more I watch this film, the more I respect what Zack Snyder was going for and accept his reimagining of the characters, and it's turned into a film that I return to quite often. Woven throughout the story are ideas about identity, purpose, family, and I think all of it is quite profound and powerful. Add to that, Hans Zimmer delivers an amazing score, probably my favorite of his, and it just elevates everything to that next level. Henry Cavill delivers a great new interpretation of the character that's the most shredded we've ever seen Superman, and Zack Snyder, as usual, delivers amazing action sequences, and there's a lot of stuff you can do when you have Kryptonians battling it out. From the score, to the themes, to the ideas, to the performances, to the amazing action, I think they made a very powerful film, and with 6 years to reflect on it, this is definitely my favorite film inside of the DCEU. If you want more videos just like this one, check out that playlist right over there. If you want your free audiobook, click that link down below. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies too much.